वो ये कैमरा तुम आगे ले जाओगे, उसके लिए परफॉर्मेंस के लिए भी कुछ कटवेज ले लेना और ऑडियंस भी।
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning and a very warm welcome to all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning and a very warm welcome to all of you. May I request you all to kindly please take your seats. We are ready to start with the inaugural session. Once again, a very warm, a very hearty welcome to you all to the Next Step Conference 2014. May I request you all to kindly please take your seats. May I also take the opportunity of requesting you all to please do remember to either switch off your cell phones or put them on silent mode. May I once again request you all to kindly please be seated. We are ready to begin the inaugural session. And may I take the the opportunity of reminding you all to please do remember to either switch off your cell phones or put them on silent mode.
लेवल कम नहीं किया है क्या वहाँ तूने बोला है तो वो लेवल कम करके रखेगा हमारा यार पूरा गूंज रहा आवाज़ हाँ देखो
Dignitaries, invitees, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning and a very warm welcome to Next Step Conference 2014. Years ago, when I was a kid, in everybody's notebook, we all remember to have written that essay which began with, "पढ़ोगे लिखोगे तो बनोगे नवाब, खेलोगे कूदोगे तो होगे खराब." Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Next Step 2014, and all of us who have gathered here this morning today certainly do not believe in this adage. Well, all work and no play can certainly make not just Jack, but anybody of us very dull. Goh Chok Tong, Lee Kuan Yew, Nelson Mandela, Abraham Lincoln are just some of the names who believed in the nurturing, bonding, healing, and togetherness that sports embody. And today, Next Step 2014 opens with a commitment to sport for all. It gives me great pleasure in presenting before you this morning a performance by children, or rather, as I would like to put it, an inspiring performance by the children of Magic Bus. Please put your hands together and welcome them.
My president once said, where there is righteousness in the heart, there is beauty in the character. Where there is beauty in the character, there is harmony in the home. When there is harmony in the home, there is an order in the nation. And when there is an order in the nation, there is peace in the world.
Congratulations to all the children, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure that you thoroughly enjoyed this very innovative and different way of inaugurating a conference. Please bear with us as we are getting ready. The stage and the dais is getting prepared now. Ladies and gentlemen, Sport for All, a reinforcement of the primary agenda of Sport for Development is to reach out to all people and enable conditions for everyone to access the playground. It separates sport programs that seek to promote excellence from sport programs for development. There are those programs where those who have the required skill and competence are promoted, whereas in this program, skill, competence and ability are secondary. What is important is to participate and to reflect on the participation to enable behavioral change. Thank you for bearing with us, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure in inviting our honorable dignitaries to take their seats on the dais. As you can all see, we have in our midst this morning Indian tennis legend and UN Messenger of Peace, Mr. Vijay Amritraj. Put your hands together and get your please accompany him and take their seats on the dais. We take the pleasure of welcoming in our midst Honourable Dame Tessa Jowell, Member of Parliament, House of Commons, London, UK. Put your hands together and we take the pleasure on stage. Our warmest welcome to His Excellency, the Australian High Commissioner to India, Mr. Patrick Suckling. Our warmest welcome to you, sir. May I request you please join us on stage. Our heartiest welcome to Ms. Sophie Bouvet, Director, International Relations at Australian Sports Commission. Please put your hands together as we take the on stage. I take the pleasure of welcoming in our midst Ms. Moya Dodd, FIFA Executive Committee Director at Football Federation Australia and Vice President at Asian Football Confederation. Please put your hands together as I invite her onto the stage. Of welcoming in our midst Mr. Robert Morini, Head of International Development, UK Sport. Our heartiest welcome to our honoured guest, Mr. Ned Wills, Director, Laureus Sport for Good Foundation. Please put your hands together as I request you to Our heartiest welcome to Ms. Melody Arts, Project Officer, UNOSDP, video message. She will be presented with a video message by from UNOSDP. Please join me in welcoming on stage Mr. Matthew Spacey, MBE, Founder and Executive Chairman. Our warmest welcome to all the dignitaries who have now taken their seats on the dais. We begin the program this morning with the ceremonial lighting of the lamp. May I request you all to please light the ceremonial lamp and inaugurate this convention. May I request the Honourable Chief Guest and the other guests on the dais to please do us the honours of lighting the ceremonial lamp. Ladies and gentlemen, according to Indian tradition and culture, the lighting of the symbolic lamp symbolizes new and auspicious beginnings. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take this moment to bow our heads in obeisance to Lord Almighty. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have the pleasure of presenting flowers to the honourable dignitaries who are now seated on the dais. To warmly welcome in our midst Mr. Matthew Spacey, may I request Mr. Avik Swankar to kindly come and present a bouquet to the honourable guest. To present a bouquet to Ms. Melody Arts, may I request Mr. Jaydeep Bhatia to please do the honours. We warmly welcome Mr. Ned Wills. May I request Ms. Kusum Mohapatra to kindly present a bouquet to the honourable guest. We warmly welcome Mr. Robert Morini. May I request Ms. Havo Vivadia to kindly present a bouquet of flowers to the honourable guest. To present flowers to our honourable guest, Ms. Moya Dodd, may I request Mr. Shrikant Mishra to kindly do us the honours. We warmly welcome Ms. Sophie Bruways. May I request Ms. Geetanjali Singh to kindly present a bouquet of flowers to the honoured guest. We warmly welcome His Excellency Mr. Patrick Suckling to present a flower to the honoured guest. May I request Ms. Vaibhavi Bhalikar to please join us on stage. Our warmest welcome to Honourable Dame Tessa Jowell to present a bouquet of flowers to her. May I request Ms. Harshita to please join us on stage. To present a bouquet to the Honourable Chief Guest, Mr. Vijay Amritraj, may I request Ms. Monisha Diwan to please do us the honours. Our warmest welcome to Mr. Prateek Kumar to kindly present a bouquet to him. May I request Ms. Geetanjali Chala to do us the honours. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the pleasure of having with us this morning Mr. Matthew Spacey, MBE, founder and executive chairman, Magic Bus India Foundation. I now request him to kindly deliver the welcome note. Please put your hands together and give a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. I remember standing on a stage similar to this 9 years ago in 2005, Next Steps in Zambia. Unfortunately, I say this as a rugby player, I was actually asked to present at that conference a whole session on monitoring and evaluation to a panel of great experts and academics. I think my cover has now been blown and they've kept me away from anything cognitive whatsoever in this conference. And I now have the pleasure of welcoming you all to Next Steps. Welcome everybody to India and Next Steps 2014. Well, it's a great pleasure, and it's really fantastic to see so many of the same organisations, if not the same faces, as were present in Namibia. I think many of the pioneers of sport for development have come today, and they're still around, and it's wonderful to see them. People like UK Sport, we have Matari from Kenya, the Right to Play, we have Lauria Sport for Good, Cricket for Change, and many others who've really in many ways moulded this sector that we now speak about so much today. Together, collectively, we've actually, I think, triggered a movement which now has thousands of organisations across the world using sport as a medium for change in young people's lives. And in this journey, I think many of us have struggled on how to communicate what we do, how even to measure what we do, and really even validate our own existence. And I remember when we started 15 years ago, going to many funders, partner organisations, and trying to explain that we use football in the slums, and it's really to their amusement and my frustration, because in those days, certainly, seeing was believing. It's taken about 20 years of persistence, and I think now very good science, to enable us to really understand and carve out a proper niche for the sector that we deserve to be in. I know in the room today there are people who have validated and spent many of their years trying to explain and understand how we use sport for the betterment of young people and children. You know, I think we're at a position now where we know when we use a good program in sport for development that less people will have HIV, that more girls will go to school, that children will eat better nutrition, that girls will be empowered and report sexual violence, and that young people will have a better livelihood and go to further education. I'm looking forward to a conference where the younger organisations learn from the old, and we don't replicate that learning, and the old embrace new ideas, new segments and new geographies. I would encourage that we move on beyond the how, and we focus on this conference on the what and the to who. We have 20 years of wisdom behind us, but with that comes a price, and that price is articulating our outcomes and impacts. This articulation will define the success and growth of all our work over the next decade. We need to be obsessive about this. I'm really excited about the future. No other methodology, no other curriculum, no other process has the unique ability to galvanise children and young people and shift the behavioural needle in the way that our programmes do. Whether you're in a slum in Nairobi, a village in India, a housing estate in England, or working with indigenous populations in Australia. Our ability to create ecosystems, I think, is unique. Run well, we can only ever aid and add value to individuals, civil society, or state government and policy. And possibly, therefore, the possibility, therefore, of partnerships is incredible. Mainstream, and that includes government, institutions, and funders, are recognising that we don't just play football or cricket, that we have something that few others have, the ability to engage, enable learning, trigger belief, and access opportunity structures that would very often be inaccessible to young people. It's at events like this that we have the opportunity as an industry to share new program technology, new impact assessment tools, and great and common platforms for advocacy, partnerships in funding, and many other forms of support. In this room, we represent organisations that have impacted tens of millions of children, often from the most challenging environments, to overcome something. I think we need to leverage each other and understand that there is real power in our cohesion and working together. I'd like to finish with a quote from the great philosopher Andy Sellins, who says, "We have the balls to change the world." Finally, I'd like to especially thank the Australian government in the various formats that we have sitting down, particularly the Australian Sports Outreach Programme, really for making today possible in terms of the financial support they've given us, not just for this conference, but over many, many years. I'd like to thank our chief guest, Vijay, and Dame Tessa Jowl as well for making the long journey over here from abroad. Thank you very much, and I look forward to it, and also my esteemed panelists, but I look forward to a really engaging day and next 4 days ahead. Thank you, and welcome once again.
Thank you, Mr. Spacey, for this warm welcome address. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the pleasure of having in our midst His Excellency Mr. Patrick Suckling, the Australian High Commissioner to India. I now request the honoured guest to kindly deliver the keynote address. Please put your hands together and give a warm welcome.
Thank you, and thank you, Matthew, for providing such good context before we start. It seems to me the energy and the joy, the cooperation and the coordination we just saw from those children speaks more volumes than I ever could in this short talk that I gave. It was a wonderful opening to what I hope is a very successful conference. Could I thank also Prateek Kumar, the CEO of Magic Bus, who's worked tirelessly and constantly to make this a success, but also the success of Magic Bus in India is such a phenomenon. Can I also acknowledge the Right Honourable Dame Tessa Jowl, Member of Parliament, House of Commons, London, UK, for being here today. And also so many people from around the world and from so many different organisations in the audience. Welcome to you all. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, as you know, or many of you may know, some of you may not know. I'd be surprised if you didn't. The Australians are obsessed with sport. We played at an elite level in all sorts of different sports. In fact, far too many, some people think, for relatively small population. We've got about 22 million people, and we seem to be present in most elite sports, but some of us think that dilutes the talent pool across the spectrum, so that we might not do as well in some sports as we otherwise do, but nevertheless we have a strong representation, a long history of sport at an elite level in Australia. But the best thing, and I suppose the grassroots feeders to that elite effort are the community sports that Australians do at all different levels across Australia, and I've seen figures where the vast majority of Australians in any given week are doing some sort of organised exercise and sport together, and so I think Australia does speak from a wealth of experience, both professionally but also socially, in terms of the power of sport to do good and to build communities, and that's why we're so happy to support a conference like this, like the Next Step 2014. As Matthew outlined, the various ways in which you've built up a science and built up momentum and built up a practice of development where sport is given rightful recognition in that firmament. As we all know, we play sport for fun and for health. And talking to the Secretary of Health in India the other day, one of the biggest challenges he faces is in non-communicable diseases, and exercise and sport alone can make a huge difference in India in terms of just addressing that one phenomenon alone, according to him and according to the experts. But beyond fun, we play for skills, skills of life, whether it's teamsmanship, leadership, fairness, how you lose graciously, how you win graciously, seem to be two very important qualities in life. And I was very forcefully reminded of this yesterday when I was watching my son play soccer. He's 12 years old and is playing a very hard-fought match with the team that hopes to beat him in the finals, so it was a bit of a grudge match. And they were intensely at each other, and one boy in particular kept on pushing and muscling out my son, and my son was muscling him out. They didn't speak the same language very well, but they were communicating through elbows and legs and knees. It was getting quite aggressive, and then at one stage my son was about to score, and this guy barreled into him and knocked him over and pushed him over the sideline, and there were all sorts of blood and praises and anger, and my son leapt up, and they were just about to have what I thought was a very ugly confrontation and fight. And then better sense prevailed on both sides, and they sort of shook each other down, patted themselves on the back, shook hands, and got on with the game, and that was a wonderful thing to see. And then a few minutes later, another little kid was running and almost scored a goal, and someone took him out, and he went head over heels and really hurt himself, and so he was howling with pain and crying. And the referee was saying, play on, and the other coach whose team had the ball was saying, forget about him, you're in a good position, go for goal. And to his credit, the kid with the ball, who was going for goal, heading up into a big open space up the field, heard this guy and his mate saying, look, this guy's really hurt, we've got to stop. So he kicked the ball out, in which case at which stage his coach reacted with rage and threw up his hands and stomped around the sidelines. Anyway, the game was stopped, and because he had kicked it out, we had the throw in, and that gave us an advantage. So then our coach started sort of talking to the guys about where to throw the ball and how to take advantage of it. And what our people did is one of our team members threw the ball back to their goalkeeper to give them back the ball. And it was such a moment of graciousness and sportsmanship, which basically humbled both coaches, and they sort of muttered to themselves, "Oh yes, that's very nice, well played." And I think the children taught the adults a lesson, certainly their coaches, and I think that's the power of the life skills that sport can impart to people. As well as that, equal opportunity has been mentioned. It was wonderful to see on the stage both boys and girls doing exactly the same thing, and inaugurating and welcoming us all here today. And I know that goes on across many sports in many different countries, and just that ability for people from disadvantaged groups, whether they are from the Aboriginal communities of Australia, whether they are gender-based, or whether they are people with disabilities, supporters, I think playing an enormous role in bridging those sorts of gaps and forging links in communication and community in all sorts of ways. And I think that's better symbolised by the extraordinary goodwill and enthusiasm for the games for people with disabilities, or as I think now people say, people with different abilities. And I think the London Games in particular went all around the world as a great symbol and a great substantive demonstration of the power of sport to bring people together, even in those circumstances as well. And that's why for Australia, promoting sport is such a fundamental thing. It's part of it's in our blood, in our DNA sport, but it's also, as we all recognise now, a key way of growing up and building communities. And that's why this Australian Sports Outreach Program has been so happy to support this conference among many other activities, and we're very active in India as well as in other parts of the world. We've put a lot of effort, I'm sure you'll hear in more detail later today, and also quite a bit of money into these sorts of endeavours because we fundamentally believe in them. It's not only in terms of training and building up different sports to give people access to sports, whether it's in the more traditional sports of football or cricket, but also in other sports like netball. And we're having, we think, quite a degree of success working with partners like Magic Bus in India, and we're very happy to do that. Done to the best of everyone's abilities, so that element of sports science is very important. But we wouldn't get very far in terms of the support and the resources we provide and the efforts we make unless we can draw upon the enthusiasm, the energy, and the commitment of a whole lot of people who do so much more than we could ever do. And I think the NGOs represented in this conference here speak volumes to that. We work with a range of NGOs in India, one of which obviously is Magic Bus. And again, I'd like to pay a tribute to the work that Magic Bus does as a thriving NGO community that's supporting sports for development. And the Australian government's very proud and happy to support it and to continue support for that work. I noticed on the board there's quite a few sponsors, corporate sponsors, and I think that's another element of our work in sports for development, that getting the resources of business into this whole agenda is very important, and I think India's making great strides in terms of the new requirement that 2% of profits of particular companies in India go to corporate social responsibility endeavours, and I think that can, as I understand it, encompass the Sports for Development program. So we're very keen to work with good corporates to continue to leverage more resources for this very worthy area. Just to let you know, in Kerala, as an example of the things we're doing from an Australian perspective with India, in the next little while, we're having a multi-sport beach festival in Trivandrum, which will bring all sorts of people together to play water sports and beach sports, whether it's beach volleyball or some water polo or beach soccer and things like that. So even in esoteric areas where you might think that Indian people aren't so enthusiastic about those sports, we think that part of the focus purpose we should have is to bring new sports, new opportunities and more access to more communities in terms of different sports. Part of that is life-saving. There'll be a big life-saving component to that initiative in Kerala. And from an Australian perspective, life-saving is one of our national icons. You see the bronze stars with the life-saving caps on. Our current Prime Minister has been known to run around in, as they call them, budgie smugglers in Australia and to do his bit. But what's so important about that life-saving effort is not only does it save lives, and I understand that India, 23% of all drownings in the world arise in India. So it's vital work in and of itself, but it also builds a very strong sense of community. So anywhere you go in Australia, the surf life-saving clubs are a bedrock of the beach communities, and they literally have become a national icon for Australia. And they're all volunteer-based. Even our Prime Minister still finds time to go down to the beach and do his bit for not only saving lives, but also building stronger, happier, healthier communities. And we think that's a very tangible demonstration in Australia of how sports can develop people on so many different levels and strengthen communities. Beyond that, from an Australian perspective with India, I mean, obviously at the high level we do a lot of sport together, and I don't need to tell anyone in this audience how we play and how we work with India and the intensity of competition, especially in cricket. But we're seeking to build on that over the next little while in terms of negotiating a memorandum of understanding with India so that we can identify some more practical areas for sports cooperation. What we hope to do within the auspices of that MOU is incorporate continued work in this sort of area, because it's so fundamental, we think, for not only our relationship with India, but for our lives growing up in India. So we'll be doing quite a bit more of that. If I could just finish off by paying, as I say, a great tribute to Magic Bus, who does some truly inspiring work. I think that was very apparent to me when I was in Jaipur last year. The Australian cricketers agreed work to get them to agree, or not so much the cricketers, because you know sports people just love playing sports and they'll play sports at the drop of a hat. But all of their minders and their managers and their trainers and their medicos and their sports, their physiotherapists had to persuade a whole lot of people if the Australian cricketers wouldn't mind to undertake an initiative with the Magic Bus, where kids from some disadvantaged schools and kids from some other schools got together. I think we had 60 or 70 kids who would come and train with the Australian cricket team. And we persuaded them all because they all saw the obvious worthiness of it, and the cricketers were given, I think at the time, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, that's it, their trainer said, in terms of the way in which they could distract themselves or possibly expose themselves to injury, which would have been catastrophic from their perspective. Anyway, once the Australian cricketers came onto the pitch with these kids, I think they stayed for an hour and 20 minutes, and they had to be dragged off by their managers in the end, because once they started playing with the kids, the enthusiasm, the joy, and the learning that was occurring, I think the Australian cricketers in particular didn't want to step back from it. Certainly it was a very moving event to be at in terms of the inspiration that gave to the children, and that was just one small example of the sort of thing that Magic Bus does. And I think for everybody there, cricketers and children alike, it was a fairly unforgettable experience, and I know that Pradeep Kumar was there and probably shares those sentiments. So that's the sort of work I think that a very small example of the Magic Bus does in bringing people from all different backgrounds and at all different levels together on this extraordinarily worthy and important agenda, sports for development. So with that, could I just congratulate the conference and say I'm delighted to be here. Hope that you have very fruitful, meaningful discussions with some real concrete outcomes, which we can, from an Australian perspective, have a look at and see where we might be able to continue to support the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your encouraging presence here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we also take the opportunity of bidding farewell to His Excellency. We're very honored with your presence here today, sir, and thank you for having joined us here today. Despite our very pressing engagements, you have taken out the time to be here with us today.
If I could just apologise, I didn't intend to stay for the whole time, but something's come up in Australia which they're pulling me back to try and sort out, so I apologise for that.
Thank you for having joined us here today, sir. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Ms. Melody Art, Project Officer, UNOSDP. May I request her now to kindly deliver her address and a video message by Mr. William Lemke from UNOSDP.
And gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank Magic Bus for giving me the opportunity to present shortly about the Sport for Development and Peace International Working Group. Strong historical ties exist between this group and Next Step. Previous editions of the conference were initiated by some of the executive board members, and that's why we felt a particular responsibility that this edition of the event would take place. For those of you who are not very familiar with the Sport for Development and Peace International Working Group, let me just briefly explain to you and give a very short introduction. So since 2004, we are working with UN member states in order to promote them to include sports in their policy frameworks. And we are working on 5 thematic working areas, which are child and youth development, peace, gender, health, and disability. Can you all hear me? Since 2008, the Secretariat of this working group is hosted by the United Nations Office on Sport for Development and Peace, which is also the office of the Special Advisor, Mr. Wilfried Lemke. With the Secretariat strategically placed at the heart of international development at the United Nations in Geneva, this gives us, of course, a unique opportunity to reach out to a very broad and influential audience. We are currently reviewing our strategic direction, and on the plenary session on the 1st of July 2014 in Geneva, we will present and hopefully also embrace the new strategic plan with all participants there. Now I would like to read to you a message of the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Ban Ki-moon. I'm pleased to send warm greetings to all those gathered for the 2014 Next Step Conference. I thank Magic Bus for organizing this event and recognize the governments of India and Australia for their support. You have all come together because you recognize the power of sport to advance global peace and development. From the Olympics and World Cup to local parks and playgrounds, sport is much more than competition. Ultimately, it is about fair play, respect, tolerance and teamwork, and can therefore be a vital tool for social change. We have all seen in our own lives how sports can transcend borders and continents and unite people across social and cultural divides. That is why the United Nations supports the promotion of sports to help achieve the Millennium Development Goals and build more peaceful communities. Sports is a fundamental right for all. Everyone should have the right to participate regardless of age, ability, origin, race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. This conference encourages the exchange of valuable experiences for a sustainable, just, and peaceful future. I commend you for taking part and becoming part of our global team to pursue a better world for all through sport. I wish you a productive conference. And then I would like to introduce to you the video message of the Special Advisor for Sport for Development and Peace, Mr. Wilfried, not William, Lemke. Thank you.
Dear friends, I'm Wilfried Lemke, Special Advisor on Sport for Development and Peace to the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. I'm delighted to address the opening of the Next Step Conference, Using Sport for Good. And I would like to thank Magic Bus for giving me this privilege and for organizing this highly relevant conference. I regret that conflicting work commitments did not allow me to be with you in person. During the next days, you will discuss a lot of important topics, many of which match my priorities as the UN Special Advisor. This illustrates a global awareness of the challenges faced by our world today and a shared appreciation of where we should focus our efforts to ensure a better future. We are all aware that sport plays an essential role in creating a healthier and more active population with a wide range of physical, social and mental benefits. Further, the potential for education and social development through sport cannot be denied. This is why it's so important to ensure universal access to sport. This is why we focus on sport for all. We want to give everyone the opportunity to experience these benefits. It is our responsibility that the doorway to sport is open for all. Let me share an example with you. During my recent mission to Oceania and the Pacific, I had the chance to visit the inclusive cricket program for disabled persons of Cricket Fiji, supported by the Australian Sport Commission. Together with schools and other organisations for people with disabilities, they offer regular cricket training sessions adapted to the specific needs and capabilities of the participants. Additionally, Cricket Fiji offers fitness exercises and fruits during the breaks to promote a healthy lifestyle. I call upon all of you to be inspired by the example of Cricket Fiji. And I'm pleased to see that one of the conference themes is youth development through sport. By the year 2015, there will be 3 billion people under the age of 25. Wow. They are the future, and you are the future as well. They play a central role in inspiring children to join sport. They inspire sport for all. However, the youth also need sources of hope and inspiration. This is where we come in. As an example, my office organizes the Youth Leadership Program to engage and give direction to youth committed to sport for development and peace in their local communities, underprivileged communities. We need to see that role models are not only elite athletes, but also ordinary people like the Youth Leadership Program participants who want to work for a good cause and a better world through sport. I would like to encourage all NGOs here today to put forward participants for this unique UN program organized by my office. Regrettably, the opportunity to participate in sport in a safe and inclusive environment is not available to everyone. Sport can certainly be a powerful tool for development and peace under the right conditions. This includes, first and foremost, a sports environment free from physical and emotional harm. In October 2012, the Sport for Development and Peace International Working Group organized a thematic meeting on protection and safeguarding in sport in Geneva. Since then, I have raised these issues during a number of UN missions and high-level meetings to ensure that serious attention is paid to this topic at all levels. Likewise, on this occasion, I would like to encourage everyone here today to consider what you can do for the safety of our children in sport all over the world. To conclude, I want to thank you for your tireless efforts in this field. I am convinced that our joint contribution will lead to the advancement of development and peace. I wish you a fulfilling and inspiring conference. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank thank you, Ms. Arts, for your address and this video message by Mr. Wilfred Lemke. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the pleasure of having with us Mr. Ned Wills, Director, Laureus Sport for Good Foundation. I now take the pleasure of inviting him to deliver his address.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A couple of things occurred to me on the plane on the way over here yesterday as I thought about the conference ahead this week. The first was that a conference heavily supported by the Australian Sports Commission. I was rather opening myself up to a good deal of sporting ribbing after the UK's fairly dismal performance in the Australian summer, but nonetheless, I think that this event highlights the spirit of cooperation and goodwill and peace fostered through sport. So I'm ready for that. The second was going back to what Matthew said earlier. The last time I was at a Next Step conference was in 2007 in Windhoek, Namibia. Much has changed since then in the sector and for Laureus, and since the point that slightly earlier than that, when Nelson Mandela uttered his now iconic words at the very first Laureus World Sports Awards in Monaco in 2000. The sector has developed for very many exciting reasons, and perhaps not least because one of the things that Mr. Mandela said in his speech was that sport speaks to youth in a language they understand. And I think over the last 10 years, we've realised that that's not just they understand it, but in fact that language itself is driven by youth. And I'd just like to highlight and say congratulations to those fantastic young people for their performance to open this ceremony. So, not to take too much of your time, I just wanted to go through three learnings over the last, since that Next Step in 2007 that we at Laureus have been involved in. The first is the value of long-term partnerships. Since my first Next Step, 90% of the project partners that we at Laureus held at that point are still very much our partners today. Although, naturally, in terms of management, a 3-year grant process is great for the overall management of grants and project relationships. But lasting change results from lasting partnerships. And I think it's extremely important, and it's testament, I think, in many cases, that at that point in 2007, we may well have been amongst the biggest grant funders to a number of those projects we support. Nowadays, we're certainly not the biggest funders of those projects, but I hope that it's testament to the success of those partnerships, that many others have come in to support those organisations and to help them to grow. The second point, already touched on, is the importance of monitoring and evaluation. More and more, we require and need the information, the proof of sport really working. Once a puddle of research was available to us and to funders in how sport works in this particular context. Now there's certainly more, a pool if you like. It doesn't always say what we want it to say, but it certainly fuels debate and therefore ensures the development and ongoing development of our sector. M&E, monitoring and evaluation research, must be built in as a fundamental element of Sport for Good project management. Even the very smallest of programs should be building this in to ensure long-term sustainability. I'm constantly asked these days by our funders who both own our organisation and from whom we're trying to raise funds to support projects around the world, prove me the value. Tell me how your project, the projects that you support, are better than me investing in so many of the other opportunities for development. And it's tantamount, it's extremely important for the programs we support and the sector as a whole to be able to consistently provide data and proof of their success. A success that is inherent, that we all intrinsically understand, but we have to be able to compete for the funds that we need to support those programs. And the third lesson is that scale will be delivered through the sharing of best practice, the training of coaches. I'm constantly asked, when are we going to scale? When does this sector really start making an impact? Now, as has already been highlighted, I think the sport for development sector reaches millions of young people, has changed the lives, certainly, of millions of young people around the world. But is that really scale? And that, to me, that scale is only going to be delivered through gatherings such as this, the sharing of best practice, the training of more coaches to reach more kids with the transformational and inspirational power of sport. And I'd like to congratulate Next Steps and Magic Bus for their dedication to these learnings. And I really do encourage everybody here to immerse yourselves in the wealth of knowledge and best practice gathered here today. Thankfully, there are many here far more qualified to be standing here than I am. And I hope to meet many of them whilst they're here, and I would encourage everybody to meet and talk to as many as they can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wills, for your address. Ladies and gentlemen, we take the pleasure of having in our midst this morning Mr. Robert Morini, Head of International Development in UK Sport. I now take the pleasure of inviting him to deliver his address.
Matthew, Pratik, distinguished guests and everybody here, a very good morning. I just want to say what a personal privilege it is to be in Delhi, this conference hosted by Magic Bus, involving so many organisations that are using sport to make a difference. I've been with UK Sport for just less than 2 years, and one of the first stories I've heard since joining has been the extraordinary journey of Magic Bus, what it stands for, what it's achieved, and aiming to do next. It's therefore a double privilege for me to be here. I find your goal, your people, and the success that you're achieving truly inspirational, so thank you for having me here. Some of you know UK Sport is the government agency in the UK, is responsible for British medal success at the Olympic and Paralympic Games. And so whilst our focus is predominantly on elite sport, we've also been involved in sport development for over 20 years now, working with over 30 countries in developing quality sport worldwide. At the heart of our work is the belief that many of us here share, is the belief that quality, safe, inclusive sport is a fundamental right for all, and therefore should be accessible to everyone, regardless of your background and whether you come from a community in the UK, Senegal, Bangladesh or Rio. We widen access to sport to create more opportunities for people, especially children and young people, to play, develop and learn through sport. Just a couple of examples of work that perhaps is slightly different from what some of you may do is that we develop international programs that are linked to major sporting events that take place in the UK. For example, in the next few years, we've got the Rugby World Cup in 2015, we've got the World Athletics Championships in 2017 in London, and we've also got the Hockey World Cup in 2018. So we develop global sport initiatives which are aimed at ensuring that investment goes into community coaches worldwide, high quality sport, inclusive PE, and continuing opportunity to play those sports at whatever level people feel comfortable with, to create a lasting legacy worldwide, capable of transforming a moment of inspiration through these World Championships into real opportunity and lifelong participation in sport. Three main aspects that I think are core to our work. Connectivity. We as a government agency connect a lot of sports in the UK, including agencies, universities, national federations, with international partners overseas to help build sustainable sport and systems and share learning and grow. The other element is advocacy. We champion, like many of us here, the role of sport within government and intergovernmental institutions as well, on how sport, when managed carefully and when taking into account the local context, the needs and respecting local conditions, can actively contribute to national goals around development, health, livelihoods, diplomacy and so on. And we also champion and work with others to promote good governance in sport and through sport, leadership and safeguarding as well. And the third one, which some speakers have referred to before, is impact. Our work is centered on children and young people, whatever their gender, socio-economic background, physical ability, taking part in sport. And through sport, these people are being provided with opportunities and skills and services that would otherwise be impossible or hard for them to access. And our work in the last 5 years, just to give you a sense, has reached over 16 million children worldwide and influenced over 40 government policies, and that's been verified independently. So we're proud of the work that we're doing with so many of you here, but the work is challenging ahead. In seeking to provide and engage and empowering through sport, particularly youth and the excluded. So for instance, people with disabilities who are often ostracized from their societies, girls and young women who are vulnerable to violence and not able to access education, for instance, and indeed boys and young men who are disillusioned, unattached, or vulnerable to crime and conflict. This question about what do we mean by empowerment and how do we even attempt to achieve it, the impact, and how do we measure it, and even how do we get others to take notice is a huge challenge, and one that I really hope to unpack a little bit over the next few days here at the conference. And again, just to echo particularly what Matthew was saying, at the centre of what we do is partnership working. We're only able to operate and attempt to achieve, attempt to make a difference through the privilege of working with organisations such as those represented here. So I'm so looking forward to the next few days, sharing, learning and building on new ideas to actually think of how we can make this more effective and useful for so many people out there. So thank you very much for having me here. Look forward to it.
Thank you, Mr. Morini, for your encouragement. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is a member of the FIFA Executive Committee, Director at Football Federation Australia and Vice President at Asian Football Confederation. Please put your hands together as I invite Ms. Moya Dodd to deliver her address.
Thank you very much. Good morning, distinguished guests, speakers and participants. What a great day and what a great topic we share. It's something that's very close to my heart. My name is Moya Dodd. I'm a football player. I had the great privilege of representing Australia back in the day, and I still play in an over-35s team that's getting worse and worse every year, but nonetheless we still enjoy it. In my day job, I'm a lawyer. I'm a partner at Gilbert & Tobin, an Australian law firm, and as you've heard, I sit on committees in football. That's probably certainly a greater contribution off the field than on the field these days, but it's certainly a wonderful challenge. And I'm here because I, like you, believe that sport and football in particular is an immensely powerful means to build a better world. Why? Because I've seen it and because I've experienced it. I've seen how playing sport regularly, playing football regularly gives you better health, it gives you fitness for lifelong health. I've seen the power of participation and of inclusion, of being part of something bigger that inspires kids and adults to be at their best. I've felt the feeling of mastery, of doing something better than you did it yesterday, of doing it well, of making a difference for your team, even though you're only one person. And I've seen how football can teach you. I've seen the learning that it can bring, both as an individual, where you learn to work and improve, you learn that work pays off, that teams improve, the power of collaboration and of joint action to achieve something. And I think football is almost the perfect balance between individual innovation and mastery and team action, because each individual can make a huge difference to the game, but no individual can do that on their own. And I've seen how it can teach us all to deal with setbacks and failures, some of which are our own shortcomings and some of which are not your fault at all. They might be a poor refereeing decision or a bad tackle that the other team inflicted on you. But dealing with a setback when it's unfair is a great lesson not just in football but also in life. And I've seen how it creates opportunity. Just the fact that I'm here today, meeting all of you and speaking with you about a topic that we're all passionate about is something that only came about for me through football. And the opportunity to contribute in a global body like FIFA is also something that I would never have dreamt of as a kid kicking a ball around. And the chance to meet and travel and engage is something that gives us all the chance to find solutions. I think human interaction is what generates innovation, it generates solutions. So I hope over the next 4 days that we generate some here. And of course this applies on the field. All those lessons apply on the field to make you a better player. And they also apply off the field to make you a better worker, a better citizen, a better family member, a better parent or partner. I've experienced that personally, and I've seen how it's applied to others. I've seen refugees newly arrived in Australia, people who've lost everything about their old life, family members, possessions, homes, everything that's familiar, and often the only bit of familiarity they have and can bring with them is football. And that's their foothold to a new life. It's the only constant in a world for them that's been devastating. I've seen how it applies to differently abled kids. I had the great pleasure of conducting a workshop for some kids in Abu Dhabi last year. We played a modified game. There were some kids who were less mobile than others, so they were in the goal scoring zones at each end of the field, and in the middle the more mobile kids were thrashing it out in the midfield. And I'll never forget the look on the face of one of the least mobile kids there, who had an opportunity in front of goal and scored it. It was almost in slow motion, but I think she would have remembered every moment of that ball going into the net. And I learned that from the look on her face that it's exactly the same feeling that you get when you score a goal in a big match. And I'm sure it's what Marta or Messi feel when they score at the very highest level in a World Cup. It's the moment when you conquer everything. And that feeling's actually available to all of us through sport. It's not whether you climbed a tall mountain or a shorter mountain, it's the fact that you got to the top of it and what you could see from there. That's the moment that sport gives you. So if you want to feel like Marta or Messi, just play football. It's that simple. I've seen also how changing the hijab rule, the rule that previously existed in football, that if you wore a headscarf you couldn't play in a FIFA World Cup or an Olympics game. The changing of that rule has opened up the dream of elite football to hundreds of millions of Muslim women and girls in the world. There are about 500 million Muslim women and girls in the world. And changing that rule, for which I have to acknowledge the work of Prince Ali of Jordan, who's also a supporter of Next Step. Changing that rule, I think, is an important practical and symbolic step in showing that accessibility is really for the world. Everyone in the world can play football. And now, for the first time ever, we see a West Asian women's football team making it to the finals of the Women's Asian Cup. And perhaps it's good karma. It's a great acknowledgement. Perhaps it's good karma, but it's Prince Ali's team, Jordan, that's made it, and they'll be representing their country in Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam in May for the finals of the Women's Asian Cup. And for their troubles, they actually get to play the world champions, Japan, and they also play Australia and the host country, Vietnam. So there's 3 fixtures for all of us to look forward to. But of course I couldn't stand here today without mentioning the situation of women and girls in the world and the disadvantages that they face. Today, wherever in the world you're born, if you're born female, you're more likely to be poor, you're more likely to be abused, you're more likely to suffer sexual violence or even slavery, and you're more likely to be denied access to education and opportunity that would enable you to lift yourself out of those situations. And yet improving the lot of women and girls is a powerful leverage point to improve the situation of everyone in society. Why? Because the benefits that accrue to women flow on to everyone around her. They flow to the whole family unit. And her participation in the workforce and in the economy grows the GDP of the whole nation. So she is the point at which you can break the cycle, or which you can intervene and you can say, stop with that, let's do things differently from here. So where does football fit into that? Well, as I'm sure you know, for many, many decades, football was a man's game. It was played by men, run by men, for the benefit of the men watching. And actually women were banned completely from playing football for many decades in many countries, in England, in Germany, in Holland, in France, in Brazil, some of the greatest football nations on earth, banned women from playing the game. In England, that ban was lifted only in the 70s. I was at primary school and women's football was banned. But at the same time, at least I think, that it's the best game in the world. It's the sport that the world loves most. And what better way to give a girl a chance than by letting her in on the world's best game? And not just for her, but also to show the boys that she plays with and against as they look across the field and they see her participating in the game that was once the preserve of men, then they too realise that the world is hers too, and she is a part of it and can equally participate with them in the solutions for the next generation. So as we face the planet's big challenges, we need all of us to be part of the solution. And we all need to be at our best to contribute to that solution. And for me, football and sport is the world's common language. And that's a very big part of making that happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Dodd, for your very encouraging and kind words and for holding the flag high for all of us women out there in football. Ladies and gentlemen, I now take the pleasure of inviting our next speaker, Ms. Sophie Gomez, Director, International Relations at Australian Sports Committee. Please put your hands together as I invite her to give her address.
Thank you very much. I understand there's some technical difficulties this morning with the PowerPoint presentation. So I've been asked to do hand signals every time we need to change the PowerPoint presentation. But I'm a woman and we're very good at multitasking. So I expect that we'll manage this technical glitch. I'm Sophie Beauvais. I'm here to talk about the Australian Sports Outreach Program, which is a program funded by the Australian government. The Australian Sports Outreach Program is delivered in partnerships with governments, non-government societies, and sports federations. We find the Australian Sports Outreach currently delivered in 9 countries in the Pacific, as well here in India and in the Caribbean. What's important for the Australian Sports Outreach programs is we work in partnership to assist our partners to achieve on their outcomes. And that's crucial for our programming. Next slide, please. I'm not sure, I could do YMCA or something like that. So why next step is so important? In my opinion, this is an opportunity to celebrate the positive impact of sport on people and on their communities. It's also an opportunity to recognize the validation, or I would say the authentication of the sport for development sector over the last 5 years, especially here in India. And also, it's an opportunity to ponder on what might get in the way, what can go wrong, and how we can manage and prepare to mitigate those risks. Next slide, please. So what are we celebrating? As mentioned by previous speakers, Loris and Mr. Lemke, what is really important is actually that to understand, what makes a sport for development program successful. So as part of the Australian Sports Outreach Program, we are conducting a 3-year research, independent research in the Pacific. And also, all our partners are working and implementing and are delivering M&E system, monitoring and evaluation systems that gather data to tell us, how the programs are achieving on their objectives as well as how they're making a difference. What we are finding from the first wave of findings from the research we're conducting in the Pacific, specifically from the evidence collected in Vanuatu, Tonga, and Nauru, as well it correlates with evidence that are coming from the partners monitoring evaluation systems in the Caribbean as well as India, is that when used strategically, well-designed sports program can make a measurable contribution to community outcomes. In the Pacific, for example, the findings are demonstrating that the Australian Sports Outreach Program is contributing to healthier, more inclusive, and more cohesive communities in the Pacific. Next slide, please. So in the context of India, what we're seeing is increased participation in sport and physical activities. And that, in terms of direct benefits, it contributes to the goal of sport for all. More people active more often and for longer, and hopefully for the rest of their lives. But it's also developing leadership capabilities and skills that are life skills, and they're transferable to the employment sector. And hopefully many of the youth will be successful in securing meaningful employment thanks to their participation in sports. In the context of the Pacific, and I understand it's also a very big issue, well, around the world and here in India, that contribution to increased level of physical activity is actually contributing to reducing the risk of non-communicable diseases. What we found across all our programs through our research and monitoring evaluation work, what we have collated in terms of qualitative and quantitative data, it has shown that not only more people are active more often, but that reports of weight loss, reduction of tobacco and alcohol consumption, and an overall well-being have been found in all the ASOC activities where we've collected those data. Sport programs also can be linked to other health outcomes. An example, NGOs like Save the Children of Solomons and the NAS Foundation here in India, they're using sports to deliver health, reproductive, and sexual education to youths. So those are non-sporting programs using sports, to engage the youth and deliver, their core messages in terms of sexual reproductive health. Also in the Pacific, there's some very interesting work being done around mental health and around rugby players, and engaging people who are subject, and youth who are subject to depression, and engaging them in ways that they could actually find a safe place to share and connect and find support to help them going through what might say, rough times, in someone's lives. Next slide, please. But also what we found is that by providing women and girls with unique opportunities to develop their leadership skills, and also by empowering women and girls to be more involved in decision making, sport activities have been shown to tangibly improve gender equality and empower women and girls. An example, in Nauru, very small nation in the Pacific, 40% of the women in the program are exercising leadership, exercising 47% of the leadership positions. But we have reports that these women, once they experience exercising their leadership role in the context of the sports programs, then they go on and carry on other leadership roles in the wider community. So what women are saying is that it gives them the confidence to say, hey, I'm able to exercise leadership roles. I'm able to actually be a leader in my community, and I want to engage in other spheres. Next slide, please. What is really important too, and it's actually, and it's been mentioned by a number of speakers, is the contribution to greater inclusion of people with disability in community life. Our research is showing that helping to build the confidence and self-esteem of people with disability, providing opportunities for them to interact positively with their families and communities, and contributing to breaking down barriers and changing negative attitudes, is contributing to more cohesive and more inclusive community life for people with disability and without disability. Next slide, please. The next part of my presentation, I'd like to talk about the authentication of the sport for development sector. Now, I didn't come up with that term. Rika Day. Where's Rika? Rika Day came up with that term. I asked Rika 2 months ago, I said, Rika, of all the things that happened in India under the Sports Outreach Program, what do you think has been the biggest impact? And what she said to me, she said, the validation of the sport for development sector in the India context. So what has happened? Well, the sport for development sector has positioned itself as a game changer by increasing participation in sport and also by promoting safe and positive sporting experiences, by building youth capabilities and leadership skills, which are transferable. But it also has shown how different actors, governments, private sector, and other non-sport sector can actually collaborate together for more tangible and sustainable outcomes. But the sport for development sector here in this country has been more influential across sectors, especially in the development arena, and has gained recognition for the contribution it's making to other community outcomes. Next slide, please. So how the sports for development sector is making its mark? Well, there's resources like the Maidan Summit, the website and newsletter. Back in 2010, I did not attend the first Maidan Summit here in India, but what has been reported to me is that that first summit brought together sport for development players that did not know each other and did not realize there were so many people involved in sport for development. But more importantly, those people started to talk to one another and exchange ideas and collaborate and communicate. But another side effect of that is that it has created a much stronger voice of the sport for development sector. There's also the corporate social responsibility forums that have been delivered in this country, where heads of industry and sport for development agencies are coming together, sharing ideas on how they can work together and engage more broadly, at the grassroots level of sports. Last year, 2013, the landmark report, Power of Play, produced here in India, showcased sport for development organizations that are having a real positive impact and can be scaled up and can work and can be trusted to work with the corporate sector. Just 3 weeks ago, the NAS Foundation received 3 crore Indian rupees of grant for funding raised by the Dasra Giving Circle, which is a philanthropic circle. It will provide the NAS Foundation, more resources to outreach more girls and to continue delivering their program, in more communities, which is very important. Also, the Australian Sports Outreach Program, with all the partners here in India, produced a video, and this video will be shown, I believe, in the next few days. So please look at the video, because it makes the case on how well-designed sports programs are really making a difference in communities. Next slide, please. So what can get in the way? What can go wrong? So we just talk about all the good things that has happened thanks to the sport for development sector and what's happening. But what is really important to remember is that there's a number of things that can stop that progress and actually can regress the movement. And in my opinion, there's actually 4 things. One is the lack of accountability and transparency. Good, sound, operational and management processes are required for you delivering the programs. I call that due diligence. That means how organizations are planning their activities, how organizations are making decisions, how organizations are recruiting their staff and volunteers and managing the performance of those, how organizations are reporting to their boards and other stakeholders, how organizations are managing issues. When issues arise or are happening, what do they do? If they have a case of fraud, do they ignore it or do they address it? Funders and also your stakeholders, the children, the parents, your communities, want to see that you have due diligence process in terms of how you go about making your decision and how you go about managing your business. I would say it's equally important to invest on how you run your business than how you invest on delivering your services. The other element, I should say, what can go wrong is more like lack of commitment to effective partnerships. We know sports programs can't do it all. And in many instances, sport programs need to partner with other organizations to deliver more tangible outcomes. But what is really important, it's a bit like a marriage, you know, it's not just about getting married, it's about investing in that relationship, and it's a lifelong commitment. So before you actually get married in your partnership, you need to get to know each other, understand the agenda of all the partners involved, understand what are the mutual benefits, is it the right partnership to go with, understanding, you know, what are the risks, and being transparent about, you know, discussing those risks and how you're going to go about mitigating those risks. Partnership requires an ongoing commitment for all those involved. Otherwise, partnership can go wrong, and it will take a lot of your resources and time to actually fix it or to undo the partnership. Another very important point that other presenters have addressed is the protection and safeguarding of children in sport. Funders and the community at large want safe and an enjoyable environment for all to take part in sport, including children, where children are safe from harm, physical harm, sexual abuse, and mental harm. We also want policies where, you know, the partners in receipt of funding have compliant child protection policy, but also we all want to see policy compliances. That means good practices as part of the organization that creates a safe environment, and there's buy-in from the CEOs to the volunteers. Everyone needs to be invested in wanting to create a safe space and enjoyable environment for all to participate. My last point is communication of our stories. In my experience, we all spend a lot of time in designing and implementing programs, but far too little in terms of communicating our stories and our lessons learned. We often do not allocate adequate resources to actually communicate those stories. It's the lessons learned as well as the good stories. And it's not only just for the funders. We owe it to the participants, their parents, their communities, and everyone involved in the activities. To finish my presentation, we're here for this week. You are here, you know, to learn and share your stories. But I'll give you a homework. Those are the 4 areas for me that I think, you know, we need to keep an eye on, and we need to keep refining and reflecting on how we can do better to mitigate risk in those areas. But for your homework, I'm inviting you to reflect on what could be the risk in terms of the bumps on the road, you know, in the way you're going to deliver or you are delivering your programs. And share amongst yourself, what can you do to mitigate those risks? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Bilway, for this information about the inspiring programs that you're running, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the pleasure of having in our midst the respected guest of honor, Right Honourable Dame Tessa Jowell, Member of Parliament, House of Commons, London, UK. Please join me in welcoming her as I invite her to deliver her address.
Well, good morning, everybody, and can I thank you all very much indeed for inviting me here today, and to welcome all the delegates who've travelled from all over the world, from America, from Europe, from Africa, to make this a truly global conference with a very loud global voice. And thanks very particularly to all my friends in Magic Bus for all the work and organisation, the generosity of the shared vision, which I think is creating the excitement for this conference. And also I'd like to thank with others, join with others in thanking the sponsors of the conference, who are very generously displayed here, particularly the Australian Sports Commission, who have provided an enormous amount of help to Magic Bus, and also obviously the Indian government. Now, I stand here today as a Member of Parliament in the UK government, and as somebody who served as a minister and Secretary of State in government for 13 years. I was, for nearly 9 years, a member of the UK Cabinet, and during that time was the person, I suppose, with whom the buck stopped, who had, I suppose, the idea that bidding to host the Olympic Games in London in 2012 would be a good idea. Not many other people at that time agreed with me, but I think for 10 years I woke up every day and felt that the delivery of the successful Olympics in London 2012 was my job, or certainly my job among many others. And let me just remind you that when London won the right to host the Olympics in 2012, we made a promise to the world which became known as the Singapore Promise. The Singapore Promise was to inspire a generation of young people through sport. And that for me was the beginning of what I hope will be a lifelong involvement in the power of sport and development, discovering the power of the language of sport in development. And in London 2012, we were determined that message would not only be heard in the United Kingdom, but around the world. And for that reason, we set up with UK Sport the International Inspiration Programme that promised to fulfil that promise in what became 20 countries around the world with 15 million children. And my relationship with Magic Bus, I think, began in those very early days when Magic Bus was one of the early organisations, sport and development organisations, that was contributing to the big global voice of international inspiration. Now, with the Winter Olympic Games going on in Sochi, perhaps the preoccupation of the world, and particularly of Russia and all the competing nations, is on excellence, is on the elite achievement of sport. But I think what binds us together here, and millions of other people around our world, is an understanding about the loud voice that sport commands in development. And that isn't just about excellence, it isn't about winning medals, it's about children of the world unlocking their potential through sport. And I have to tell you, it's not only children. When I work with Magic Bus, as I've been lucky enough to do over the last 8 years, one of the highlights is taking a group of children from Mumbai or one of the other states where Magic Bus is now established, 20 states in India. 13, but the ambition goes on. 13 states across India, is to take a group of children to Karja, to the camp there, and Rob is here taking pictures, but usually he's there running the field centre. And I can remember, working with the children during a week, and there are many activities, one of which is a climbing wall, the sort of climbing wall where you grip. And I don't have many phobias or neuroses. The only one I discovered is climbing onto a sloping platform. So you can imagine as what you hope to be a fully formed adult, and actually at home then quite a senior member of the UK government, being all kitted up in my climbing apparatus and volunteering to climb the wall and face myself with my greatest terror, which is climbing on to a sloping platform, which I did. And I was getting near the platform, and I thought, I do not have the strength in my arms to go any higher. I just do not have the strength. And then I made the mistake of looking down, and I saw 20 faces looking up at me, shouting, Dee Tessa, Dee Tessa, Dee Tessa. So what could I do except feel like Olive in that childhood cartoon of Popeye, swallow the spinach and suddenly find the strength to get on to the platform. So the experience of unlocking your potential is something that doesn't stop at 15 or 20 or 30 or 40 or way beyond in my case. So I learn every time I'm lucky enough to work on the programme. But the fact is, you see, with sport and development, that all the evidence is on our side. We don't need any longer to try to persuade the world that sport is a powerful way of tackling depression and underachievement. It's a powerful way of tackling obesity. It's a powerful way of teaching young people the necessary social skills that give them a chance of making it in the modern labour market, in promoting leadership, in developing assertiveness, particularly in girls whose parents may be highly ambivalent or obstructive to their continuing their schooling. So all these are capacities and capabilities that sport, we know, has the power to develop. And when I was thinking about what I would say to you today, I was reminded also of the Christmas truce, perhaps the first time that the power of sport to promote peace was documented, when during the First World War, troops from the German and the British armies played football together and exchanged presents on Christmas Eve all those years ago in 2014. Now, before I became so closely associated with my Magic Bus family, as I've discovered today, I worked with UNICEF on the vaccination program in Bihar, in northern India, which is where I was lucky enough to meet Dr. Sujit Ranjan, who now is with Magic Bus, but was part of the drive, the UNICEF drive, to end polio, and was the reason that we all found ourselves for a week in Bihar. And a week in Bihar, supported by Ravi Shastri, a cricketing legend in India, who I can tell you was a more powerful advocate for immunisation with reluctant mothers than anybody else. And so again, because sport is so heavily invested with trust, the relationships and the standing of sporting heroes is unimpeachable in the advocacy for health and development. I remember also my times with SCORE in Southern Africa, identifying community leaders and training them as sports coaches, which involved me once in making packed lunches for a sports day where 250 children were expected, but when the word went out around the villages of the Eastern Cape that there was free food, 400 children turned up, and so we really did have then to unpack the lunches and turn food for 250 children into food for 400. I remember working with a group of volunteers on leadership development as part of International Inspiration, where I was lucky enough to meet Ned and be introduced for the first time to the work of Laureus. So Sport in development is never lost in theory, but it's found every day in our countries, on scraps of land, in rivers, derelict sites which are reclaimed as always talking about Matthew and how much I've learned from Matthew over all these years. But around the world, we see in Kailicha and other townships of South Africa the power of sport tackling HIV and AIDS, dealing with gang and gun violence through the extraordinary work of Fight for Peace and other charities. Luke Downey, who works both in East London and also in the favelas in Brazil, and is now stretching the role of his organisation. CSR and the great Premier League in the UK, and we need to make sure that the willing role of the Premier League in CSR is fully developed. And I have to tell you as well that sport is a great calling card, and you can become familiar by association. I remember when Sujit and I were in Bihar visiting a primary school, and this strange woman arrives who doesn't speak Hindi and wants to play with the children, and what do they make of this? So I try to introduce myself. And I say, I'm Tessa Jowell from the UK government. And of course they all look completely blank. And then I say, I work with Tony Blair, and they still look blank, or Gordon Brown, and they still look completely blank. And then I say, but I come from the same country as David Beckham. And immediately there is animation in this tiny classroom, and half the children throw their hands in the air and shout, Beckham, Beckham, we know Beckham, we love Beckham. They find English, you see, through the inspiration of David Beckham and football. But I think what I want to say in a conference that will celebrate so much to be proud of is that we are all pioneers who never sleep or are complacent with the completion of one challenge, always moving to the next horizon. And what really challenges me as we move from London 2012 to the Sochi Olympics is the extent to which I believe that we have to work together to foster a greater sense of obligation for this legacy, both in the International Olympic Committee, and I'm so pleased that Mova is here today, also in FIFA, to take on sport for development as a core purpose and a continuing role which moves beyond the responsibility and the sponsorship of whichever host country is in the limelight, because legacy can only be created and sustained in the long term. So that, I hope, might be our invitation, both to the IOC and FIFA, both of whom I think are open-minded and willing. And also to extend that message to sponsors, because sponsorship of the Olympic Games, of the World Cup, is highly prized by sponsors. So let's build the inextricable message that commercial success is greatest when it also carries a strong social purpose for sport and development. And social purpose, in turn, builds commercial success. So I hope that the next few days will move that challenge to engage the great governing bodies of sport, to join with us, that will create a challenge and translate it into a call that cannot be ignored. The language of sport as a driver of development change, wherever we are in the world. Because that language is a universal language, understood through our different spoken languages in every country from which we have come. So let's build together as advocates, as the loudest spokespeople for that message, both in relation to our own governments, but also the global institutions that govern sport and that manage so much of the public expectation of sport. That we have global sport, but the best global sport is also sport that accepts the responsibility and the potential of development, unlocking the potential of millions of our children around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your gracious presence here today and sharing some of those memorable experiences with us. Ladies and gentlemen, when I was learning to decipher my tennis terminology, I relearned my ABC. I was told that A stands for Amritraj, B stands for Borg, and C for Connors. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Indian tennis legend and UN Messenger of Peace, our Honorable Chief Guest, Mr.
Thank you very much. An old saying in India, you never deliver a speech before lunch. It's the biggest meal for us. Indian lunch, and then we take a siesta after that. So hold off for a few more minutes and I think we can get to lunch. But let me first say thank you very much for having me here, Magic Bus. Most important of all, for tracking me down in some part of the world and making sure I made it here in time. Saida, thank you. Pratik, Matthew, thank you all very much. An amazing organization that really makes a difference to what we all aspire to be and aspire to do. My sporting career started many, many years ago in the southern city, what used to be called Madras. And I started my tennis career very simply because I wasn't very well. I was unhealthy. I spent 4 to 6 months in hospital every year for the first 10, 11 years of my life. And my mother used to actually go sit in school for me and take notes and come and teach me in the hospital. I had 4 hours of IV in me every day. And the big dream for my mother's side of the family was tennis. And my late grandfather had a dream that one of us would someday play at Wimbledon, which it was, a pipe dream for someone lying in a hospital bed with IV stuck in his arm. And I think to this day, and I firmly believe that if it wasn't for my mother, my parents, who wanted to make sure that I wasn't left behind, that I could be normal and play a sport like other children, to be able to go to school and do my homework, which I was terrible at, to be able to pass an exam, which I couldn't do. My older brother always came first in class. If he came second in class, my house was a morgue. If I passed, my mother handed out sweets to everyone. So I had a lot to live up to as far as my older brother was concerned. But little did we expect that many years later, we would be the first brothers to play at the championships at Wimbledon. It's not the feeling of just a success or the ability to get better at what you do, but it was the fact that we had that incredible support at a young age to be able to live a normal life thereafter. If anyone had told me at that stage in my life that you were going to be able to play major tournaments and play the international tour for over 20 years and play Davis Cup for this great country, I would have honestly laughed at them. We just wanted to be able to go to school, to be able to get a job, and to be able to have an arranged marriage. And that was it. But I think to a great extent, what sport taught us, taught me and my family, was that it is exactly what Magic Dust does, and that is sport for good. The fact that we all wanted to excel, that we all wanted to be the best that we could be, you wanted to play at the championships, you wanted to play Davis Cup, you wanted to win it. You wanted to really do it not just for yourself, but when you played Wimbledon and when you played Davis Cup, it was for the country. It was never me, it was never anyone else, it was just being an Indian. And I think that is exactly what drove me to be able to represent this great country of ours for over 20 years on the international tour. I remember when we were growing up, and my parents used to be always asked the question, yes, your children play tennis, but what do they do for a living? Which was a very tough question to answer till prize money came into the game, and then people stopped answering that, we stopped asking that question. But the second question, which my late grandmother used to always ask me, was much more difficult to answer. She used to always say, why do you have to go so far to lose? And to this day, we still haven't been able to answer that one. But I think as tennis grew from the late 60s and early 70s, when we started traveling the world, which is quite some time back, obviously sport has changed to what it is today. We were the first ever professional athletes to come out of this country in any sport. And it was not something that we were able to understand, especially in India. The world over, people were excelling in sport. In society, athletes were accepted. But in India, that wasn't the case. You had to have a job. You had to go to school. You had to graduate. We had to do all of that and still play sport at the same time. And the university that we went to in what is now obviously Chennai, Madras University, wanted us to play for the university before we played for the country, which was a choice we had to make on several occasions. But there is no greater feeling for anyone in any walk of life to be able to represent one's country at the highest level. The great adage of the International Olympic Committee, it's not the winning that counts but the taking part, is a wonderful adage, and we followed it implicitly. We took part in everything. But to excel, you really had to follow what the West firmly believed, and that is winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. And I think that's where we failed in competition to a great extent. Not long ago, the captain of the Spanish Davis Cup team asked me, why don't we have great tennis players coming out of India? And I said the same reason you don't have any software engineers coming out of Spain. If you want a good tennis player, you go to Barcelona. If you want to do your outsourcing, you go to Bangalore. I think to a great extent, sport started to take shape in India over the last 2 decades. And I think today, people firmly believe that you can be a great athlete and at the same time make it into a profession. But what after that? Professional life of an athlete, especially in an individual sport, is very limited. It can be 20 years if you're lucky. It can be 2 minutes if you have a bad ankle. We've been through a lot of surgeries. I've had my ankles broken, knee surgery, elbow surgery, cortisone all over my body. I just look good, that's all. But what we have to understand is that the sporting career of any individual, especially at the highest level, is very limited, it's very short. And it's what we are able to take away from that. For me, it was my greatest education. No school or university taught me what my travels taught me. To be able to travel all the way from Poznan in Poland to Canton in China, Tashkent to Tokyo, Bombay to Boston, Stockholm to Sydney, it was exactly the same thing. Dealing with people, dealing with children, knowing exactly what they want and the future for each family. I've always been of the notion that nothing can bring people together more than sport. Nothing. It keeps families together, it keeps communities together, it can keep countries together, and it can make peace in the world. There is no question in my mind. I was very fortunate to have been a part of a lot of these things that have happened over the last 3 decades. At the highest level and at the lowest level. 1974, the world was a different place. We were fortunate, I was 20 years old, we were fortunate to lead India to the final of the Davis Cup, and we defaulted to South Africa because of their apartheid policies at the time. On a micro level, that was disappointing for an athlete. On a macro level, it was the best thing to do. It took us another 13 years of constant hard work to eventually get to the final again in 1987. And again, in the second round of that match, the quarterfinal of the Davis Cup that year, we were due to play a country that we did not have full diplomatic ties with. And it took one meeting between me and the then Prime Minister at the time to be able to request him to somehow make this match happen, because it was due to happen right here in Delhi. It was a tough decision to make, because we had no sporting contacts with that particular nation. We had no connectivity at all. We had no embassy, full-fledged embassy in India. No team had ever gone there or come to India. How do we allow it to happen? But I impressed upon our then Prime Minister that it was important to use our sport to be able to break down these barriers. I knew I had him after an hour of conversation, because finally he asked me, do we have a chance to win? I said, we are the underdogs, but we didn't manage to win 4-love, and India went on to the final of the Davis Cup that year. But today, of course, we have full diplomatic ties, best of friends, tremendous trade, and a great relationship with this great country of Israel. So I think when we look at it in that context, and we see what can be done, it can be done. Many years ago, Right Honourable Member of Parliament from the UK might even remember, I was part of an event that was held between the UK Parliament and the US Congress, a tennis tournament, between members of the House of Commons, House of Lords, House of Representatives in the US, and the Senate. And we ran an event over a weekend at the Congressional Club in Maryland, just to be able to understand one another even better. And there are no better friends in the world than the US and the UK. It was a wonderful event for 3 days. The event raised money for charity on both sides of the Atlantic, and it was a very useful exercise. Things can be done, and I think what Magic Plus is doing at the grassroots level is absolutely outstanding. My family grew up with tennis. We continue to play tennis for health and exercise. And the one thing that keeps us together as a family as well is the fact that we still continue to play tennis together. One of the proudest moments for me was when my son played Davis Cup for India as the #1 player in this country. Much more than when I played. It was tougher to watch him lose than me losing. But it was something that was quite unique. There are several reasons you play a sport. The first, of course, is when we want to excel. 20 years ago, if someone had told me we would have had a young girl in the top 50 in women's tennis, a world champion in chess, a top 5 in a badminton player, a gold medalist in shooting, we never would have believed it. But sport has come a long way in our country and a lot longer to go. I think it is important to understand the power of sport, and I'm not quite sure in India we grab that yet. We need to absolutely grab it with both hands and believe in what, something like what Magic Bus is doing, take it around the country to be able to fulfill not just our obligations, but use it as a passion and drive it from the heart of what can be truly achieved through sport. I served the UN for 7 years as a messenger of peace. One of my most memorable visits was going to northern Sri Lanka to visit some of the villages there, people who were displaced by the war. And what did I take with me? But basketballs, badminton rackets, cricket bats, from various sponsors who were kind enough to donate them to me. And I took boxes and boxes and boxes of them down to these villages about 3-4 hours north of Colombo to be able to share it with the children. That is the only time when I left that the adults told me that they put a smile on their face. That was the only time that the families actually had a chance to enjoy themselves in spite of the fact that they had lost everything. It's only because of the fact that they were able to kick a football around. And to me, nothing was more powerful than that. Not winning any match in any part of the world. I think from the standpoint of our growth in India itself, as far as what we aspire to be, are we trying to be the next Tendulkar? Are we trying to be the next Vishwanath Anand? Are we trying to be the next Saina Nehwal? Abhinav Bindra? Are we trying to be all of that? Yes. We do need that. We do need to win the medals. And to a great extent, I'm happy to say, rather see, that India is moving in the right direction as far as our sports are concerned. But the second point is that we can play also at a national level and be good at what we do, whether it's Mumbai competing with Delhi or Kolkata or Chennai or Bangalore or Ahmedabad, Lucknow, and compete with one another at a particular level. The third, of course, as we all know, and it's been made several times here, is for health and exercise. Obesity is a problem worldwide, and I think it's important to look at diet and exercise that go hand in hand with what we have to offer. What do we have to offer the children so that they actually have that inbuilt in them as they come through their lives? And I think what Magic Bus does, from early childhood to livelihood, is brilliant in the fact that they're able to stress on both these issues all the way through the young child's career. Let's not forget the fourth part, and that is the ability to communicate. It builds confidence in a youngster to be able to play a sport. Girl or boy, it doesn't matter. Fat or thin, it doesn't matter. Religion doesn't matter. It is the fact that they're able to gain that confidence and be able to discuss and talk to other children, other adults on the same wavelength. I always told my two sons, play a sport, irrespective of what sport it is. But play a sport because it will help you to communicate with others. To this day, when I go to different parts of the world and I stand on a public court in some obscure town in some country, you still have people coming up to you and saying, oh, can you play with us? Not because they know you, absolutely not, but because you can hit a tennis ball. And I'm able to play with them on a public court, and I know I have an invitation for dinner. I think when you grow up with sport that has been so close to you and so useful to you, and give you a chance, as was also rightly pointed out, gives you an opportunity to open doors, we need to make use of it. We need to make use of it for the future. We need to make use of it for our future kids who are growing up and for the next generation. Sport has a lot to offer, and I think we just sort of touching the tip of the iceberg. It is a special job, in my opinion, that hasn't totally been explored and exploited in India. And we honestly need to be able to go after it and grab it with both hands and grab it with a passion. All the way from the sports ministry to the federations to all the NGOs that use sport for this purpose, I think it is a vital element of bringing everyone together. People always ask you, what does it take to be a successful athlete? What does it take to be a successful sport? Well, there's no real formula, honestly. I call it the 5 Ds, but that is for excellence, and I think it's something that you try to manufacture yourself. The first, of course, is desire. If you don't have the desire to do it, don't bother. I think to a great extent, people who have the desire and passion get into it a lot easier. Then there is that determination to be able to go after it, sacrificing all else. Are you willing to have that kind of forthright determination that follows with the kind of determination, discipline, and the dedication that you need to be able to excel in a particular sport? And that is not easy. People do not understand still in this country that what it takes to be able to actually jump that net. Finally, when you've gotten all of these things done, the desire, the discipline, the dedication, the determination, at the end of the day, you're never going to succeed in anything that we do unless you have divine intervention. People always say to me, oh, were you disappointed that you didn't win Wimbledon? Yes. I came close several times, I didn't win it. But that would be looking at the cup half empty. And I tend to look at the cup half full all through my life. We are very fortunate, my dear friends, that sport in India has taken a turn for the better. We're excelling in sport at a high level. We need to work at it even more at the highest level to be able to give us the kind of medals that the West wins on a regular basis. Not just in our own Asian Games and the Southeast Asian Games and so on, but at the Olympics and international meets that we send our teams to. I think it was the saddest sight for me to see that the Indians who qualified for the Sochi Games didn't march in Sochi under the Indian tricolor. And I hope and pray that at the closing ceremony they will. The greatest achievement or accolade for any Indian, and I'm sure it is for every country in the world, is to be able to play under their national flag. I was fortunate that every city in the world that I played in, every country that I visited and played in exhibition or otherwise, that the Indian anthem was played, the national flag was flown, just because I was playing there. And there's no greater pride than that. So when I look at what sport has given me, first and foremost, my health. The fact that I could get out of that hospital and get back to doing something that any child would want to do. But because I had the kind of parents that I had. And today, my mom and I talk about it all the time. And it is so heartwarming and with great pride that I see Magic Bus doing exactly what my parents did for me, for the children today. So let me just conclude by saying that we are always at a crossroads in India when we get consumed by the political awareness in this country. And when elections come about, we're completely consumed by it, including all of the television networks and all of the media. But let us not forget, irrespective of who's in power, in any organization, on from any walk of life in government, that we pay attention to sport to such a great extent, because honestly, that is what is going to keep this country together, keep us together as a people, and continue to generate peace amongst all of us in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been proud and privileged to have played for India for a long period of time. I was honored, and I hope I can continue to do so in other walks of life. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Amritraj, for having joined us here today. You're a constant source of inspiration to all of us. I now take the pleasure of inviting Mr. Prateek Kumar, CEO, Magic Bus India Foundation, to kindly propose the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon to you all. It's a tough act to follow Sir Amritraj and Dame Tessaja, both seasoned campaigners, and I'm doing a humble job here. But I guess it's an overwhelming moment for us to have such august company here, and my duty to offer the vote of thanks. So let me first draw attention to a couple of things. One, there are many more NGOs beyond Magic Bus who do a fantastic job in the space of sport for development. So just to kind of highlight, and a lot of them are here as partners, as people who kind of do a good job but may not get the limelight that we seem to be getting here, because we are obviously the host, and we're getting more speakers on the dais than anybody else can. But there's a lot of good work happening across India, across Asia, and across the world. And one of the prime purpose of this conference is also to get those voices up here, and also introduce the concept to a whole lot of other players who are traditionally not into sport or use sport in the sense that we do, but can possibly see a lot of merit in this approach. That's also one of the prime purposes of the next step. So it's not just a kind of a congregation of people that we all know, and possibly, of course, there are a lot of faces that we are familiar with, but the idea is also to open up this forum to have a lot of other players. So on to the vote of thanks, and I don't want to keep you waiting for long because I know lunch is waiting. Let me first start off by thanking Vijay sir for coming in here at a very short notice. You are a legend, and I've heard you speak before in my life, and always an inspiration. And the fact that you look so young at this age gives me a massive complex, but yeah, I'm going to live with it. Can't do much about that. Dame Tessaja for being a friend of Magic Bus and believing in this cause and international inspiration, which I believe has been Magic Bus's inspiration to take it out of Mumbai, and now we're in 14 states of the country. So every month we're increasing that. So that's how it works. Next month we should be in Uttarakhand, that'll make it 15. Patrick Suckling sir, he's left because he had some engagements, and that's why he had to turn his speech around, so he came in early. But we're indeed indebted to the High Commission for a lot of support that is coming through at that end. Sophie Bouvet, ASOP, our biggest funder, and hence I think I need to, we'll catch up later in terms of how to express my gratitude to you. But I guess this function, this organization, whatever event that we're trying to put together is all because of the support that we're getting from ASOP. So thank you, Sophie, for that. And thank you for coming here and honoring this occasion. Moya Dodd, the first time I'm interacting with you, but I've heard so much about you otherwise, as not just a person in FIFA, but championing the women's space and the hijab thing that you mentioned. It required a lot of guts, and of course Prince Ali couldn't have done it without you, so congratulations for coming here, and it's an honor to be in your company now. Robert, a friend, and now 2 years into UK sport, but we've been talking, I guess from the very first month you were around, and a great supporter of Magic Bus and the concept of sport of development. Thank you for making time here. We'll catch up more in the days to come. Ned Willis, Laureus has been a long supporter of Magic Bus and the space for sport for development. Someday we want to get a Laureus award and possibly have one of our children become a Laureus Sport Person of the Year or something like that. We'll all wait for that day. Thank you, Ned, for coming over. Melody, for making it from UNSDP. Thank you for getting those messages across. I know you worked very hard to get the Next Step conference heard by Ban Ki-moon. I think this is the first next step that should have a message from Ban Ki-moon coming. So it's truly an honor to be recognized by the Secretary General himself, and of course the message from William Lemke. Thank you so much for making that happen, and thank you for coming to the conference. And finally, Matthew, our founder, our leader, our inspiration. So I was just telling somebody that Matthew is Magic Bus, and that's how we look at it. So he's taken on a different role, but his presence means a lot to us, and we're indeed proudly privileged to have him here on stage, and he's going to spend some time with us. Thank you all for making it here. My vote of thanks is done, but I guess we're all here in the spirit of trying to learn, and I picked up a few words from Sophie when you talk about celebrate, recognize, and ponder. But I just thought I'd like to use the word inform as well, because there are a lot of new players whom we really want to integrate into this concept. This will be a space that will really flourish, because I'm a person from the traditional social space, and I know that space is kind of lingering on its own pace. But this is a space that's going to be the future. So welcome to the future. With this, I end my word of thanks. Thank you so much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the inaugural session of the Next Step Conference 2014. May I invite you all to please join us for lunch, and please do remember to carry all of your belongings while you're out for lunch. Thank you, and have a pleasant day ahead.
Rakesh.
May I have